Meet your new go-to for a fresh and inclusive approach to health.
Wellness Rebranded is the pod where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist combine perspectives to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and your feelings.
Whether we're serving up juicy stories, breaking down the latest research, or dropping practical tips, we'll leave you informed, inspired, and ready to take health-promoting action.
We get you because we are you.
We've joined forces because we know that health isn't one-dimensional, and neither are you.
Tune in for real talk that cuts through the wellness and diet culture hype. Stay for the laughs, the insights, and the feel-good vibes. So today we're here with a very special guest. We have Dr. Lisa Folden. She's a North Carolina licensed physical therapist, NASM certified behavior change specialist, and anti-diet health and body image coach. She owns Healthy Fit Physical Therapy and Wellness Consultants in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she provides trauma-informed and weight-inclusive care to clients in diverse bodies and those in eating disorder recovery. As a Health at Every Size ambassador and movement expert, Dr. Holden assists clients seeking healthier lifestyles. Her weight-neutral approach encourages intuitive eating, joyful movement, body acceptance, and breaking up with toxic diet culture. Dr. Lisa is a mom of three, published author and speaker whose goal is to see as many people as possible living their best lives without worrying about their weight. A regular contributor to articles on topics related to physical therapy, health, wellness, self-care, motherhood, body image, and fat-friendly healthcare, Dr. Folden has had the distinct honor of being featured in Oprah Magazine, Shape Magazine, New York Times, and several other publications, and was selected as one of Charlotte's 50 most dynamic women. She's the co-host of the Feeling Lighter podcast by We Shape and a member of the National Association of Black Physical Therapists, the Association of Size, Diversity, and Health, the No Women and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc. So Dr. Lisa, welcome. We're so excited to have you here with us. Oh my gosh, there was so much juiciness in your bio. I can't wait to sort of dig in. And
I told you guys she was so well aligned with us.
yeah, I can't wait to dig in and learn from you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I forgot. I always forget if I send the full bio or the small part, but thank you for reading all of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, every line was more interesting than the last, I must say.
I mean, hopefully that was the full bio, because if that was the short, I need to step it up in my life here. Like,
No, that was the full one. You got the full.
So I love that you shared with us before we came online that you're actually share office space with dietitian and a mental health therapist. So obviously super well aligned on that as well. How did you come to kind of, I guess, weight inclusive, weight neutral work, or the intuitive eating space?
You know what? I think it's a similar story to everyone's. You know, I was a physical therapist, very traditionally trained, and I was always a wellness coach, and I was creating weight loss programs, and I was trying to help other people and myself lose weight pretty much my entire life. And it just came to a screeching halt when I realized, like, I don't have the control I thought I had. And I stumbled upon the book Health at Every Size by Dr. Bacon, and it changed my whole life. And then I kept reading. So I read all the intuitive eating books. I read Harriet Brown's work. I read, Fearing the Black Body. I just kept going. And it was like knowledge. I feel like I have a PhD in like anti-diet work, but because of understanding that, having my own personal experience, failing, if you will, at weight loss over and over again, coming into that knowledge just changed my life, because it was like, oh, this finally makes sense. I'm a science girl. I like to see the research and the numbers. I like to see the puzzle pieces fit together. And for me, that did it. So I transitioned my entire, existence and really my whole life, personally and professionally, to this work and to approaching healthcare and fitness and wellness from, this new perspective. And I was in an office space alone for years. I've had my practice open since 2013. And in 2022, my lease was about to be up. And so I was like, I'm spending a lot of money every month in this very lonely space in a basement. And I felt like I needed something new, almost to match my transition, to more of an anti-diet setup. And I was just like Googling and searching and looking for like gym spaces. And I again stumbled upon a dietitian named Annie, and her practice here in Charlotte's called Second Breakfast. And she was like, Oh my God. Me and Melissa's the mental health therapist who owns Deeper Roots. She's like, we're moving our practice into a huge space and we're looking for other anti-diet, weight neutral professionals to be in the space with us. And I was like, so I had like a 4-month window where I had to wait because the space was getting set up. But when they said it, I was like, I'm there. So I've been in this space with the dietitian practice and the mental health practice since April of last year. And it has been amazing to be in a space where everybody's on the same page. And when you refer clients or they refer clients, we all have a very similar message and we're very aligned. And it's been really, really good for me personally and for my business.
That's amazing. I think, yeah, you're right. So many of the journeys echo one another, right?
Yeah.
You do a lot of work educating on your social media feed about anti-fat bias, which is something that, we touch on in all sorts of ways on the podcast, but I would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was one of those things when I became aware of my and the world's anti-fat bias. It's almost something you want to shy away from because it's uncomfortable and it requires a level of vulnerability and being very honest about the thoughts that go on inside our head. And I spend a lot of time telling people all the thoughts in your head are not words that should come out of your mouth. So it is one of those things where it's like, you know what, this is something we got to talk about because if we pretend it's not happening, then it just continues to grow and fester and get worse. So, for me, acknowledging anti-fat bias is a critical step in becoming, making peace with your body, making peace with other people's bodies, accepting the reality that, people can exist in varying size bodies at varying states of health. It's also not my business, and so I do a lot of work trying to get people to recognize the sometimes covert ways that we, express anti-fat bias. And it might be seeing someone in a larger body in a bathing suit and thinking like, ooh, or can't believe she wore that. Or having the audacity to say something about it. That's a whole nother level of bias.
I'm
But
told I'm very brave for wearing a bikini like frequently. And I'm always like, yeah, it's a bathing suit.
It's
That's
a bathing
wonderful. That's
suit.
what I should be wearing.
You're literally at the pool or the beach. So people don't, there is a level of ignorance, right? People don't always know what they're saying or implying by what they say, what they do, or what they don't say. And so it's just I think it's my responsibility. I consider myself mid-sized to small fat. My body has transitioned a lot over the last 4 years, which is also not something that's talked about, honestly, when you transition to more of an intuitive eating lifestyle, how much your body might change. So I've been grappling with that while coaching other people through that process. But I just think it's really important to notice the thoughts we have, the thought patterns around people's bodies, our bodies, as it relates to things the world tells us aren't, accessible to us or to larger body people. So love, success, money, joy, bathing suits, like all the things. And so it has to be called out in order for us to start shifting the narrative in our heads. So once you're aware of it, you can, kind of confront those thoughts, give yourself a different thought, and then expose yourself to the contrast of that. So if you have this belief and you're just recognizing it, that people in large bodies will never be in love and have fulfilling marriages or great partners. So now you have to recondition your brain to know like that's stupid, that's not true. And then you need to start seeing it, in as much a way as you possibly can. So I always use social media. I need to see people in large bodies, living their best lives, in love, doing the things that they want to do so that I can give myself that evidence so that I stop believing this very ignorant thought, because it's just been conditioned and fed to me since I was a baby. So yeah, it's really important to me to get the word out about that for all of us, because we're all better when we know better, when we realize that's not the truth for us.
No, we have been programmed to so much stuff since we were little by media, by our parents, that it's so ingrained sometimes that it's hard to see it. And with the years, I've realized in my case personally of the many stuff that I believe that is not based on reality, is not based on evidence, is just given to me from, by generations, and you just keep
Yeah.
it. But also, Dr. Folden, you made me think the change that can come to your own life when you realize the thought patterns that you have, that you also bring to yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you are constantly thinking these things about other people, what are you thinking about yourself, and how much are you limiting yourself to what you can or cannot do, also for these beliefs that you've been bringing with you without even questioning them, or bringing some critical thinking to them, or contrasting them with evidence. It's mind-blowing. It's really, I get really curious with that. It's like, really,
Yeah. It is. And I would guarantee the thoughts we have about other people's are only a fraction of the, I would say, the cruelty and the meanness sometimes we think about ourselves,
Oh,
so
oh
sure.
yeah,
and so
oh yeah.
that's tough. Like, you imagine, like, the nasty, mean thoughts we have about other people, the way we think about ourselves is 10 times worse. So, it's a level of like self-deprecation that nobody needs. Like, nobody thrives in that space. So yeah,
And
and we haven't questioned these beliefs ever because they've just been a part of our lives.
And the concept of your value as a human being is dependent on so many things,
Right.
that we believe are what we're, and is in my case, it's taking me so many years to realize I have value because I exist,
That's
period.
it.
End of the story. It has nothing to do with my beauty, with what, or concept of beauty, or what I accomplished, or my weight, or the way I do things. It's like, no, I
Yep.
bring a gift to the world just by existing, whether, but it's a, it's
I
a
love that.
journey.
It is a journey. It's a journey back to ourselves because we don't come
Yes.
into this world thinking we're invaluable or hating our bodies or anything. We're very neutral. We very much are just trying to exist, and things change over time because of the messages we get. But I love that. I like to tell people, your value is inherent in your existence. You get to be
Yes.
valuable because you're here. That's it. But you don't have to do anything. Everything else you do is extra. It's the icing. It's the cherry on top.
Yes.
But you're the cake.
And that's
Just by
why
being here.
this podcast, we call it, it's a movement. That's what we want to create with this podcast, is
Yeah.
inviting everyone out there to start this journey of
Yeah.
really questioning what you've been believing, and therefore bring change to your life, which is
Mhm.
going to bring a change to how you perceive and relate to other people when it comes to all those topics. So once again, listeners, accept our invitation to be part of this movement and ditch all that. Can I say a bad word? How many bad words do we say? It's like, I feel like saying ditch that shit. And it kind of rhymes too. Ditch the shit. Anyway.
I support that.
So, Dr. Lisa, your social media is one of my favorite things on the internet right now.
Oh, thank
I
you.
almost feel like I have to control myself to like not share everything.
Keep
Um,
sharing. Keep sharing. I'm fine.
But one of the things I love about what you do is that you show your office and how accessible it is to people in larger bodies. And to be honest, this has never even crossed my mind until recently. I went to a doctor's appointment and I sat down in the waiting room and I was like, damn, this chair is tight on my hips. And I was kind
Mhm.
of like, oh my God, this chair is tight on my hips. Like, even someone who's very clearly in the anti-diet world and
Yeah.
like I have decent body image and all that, I felt like a moment of panic. Like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I need to fix myself.
Mm.
When in reality, like the problem was the chair.
The problem was the chair,
You
and the
know?
fact that those were the chairs that they decided to get in a medical office. That's the
So I
problem.
looked around the whole waiting room, and the waiting room is pretty sizable, probably 20 or 25 chairs in there. Every single one had arms. And I was
Mm.
like, okay, like I am big, but there are people in the world that are larger than I am. So I was
Mhm.
kind of like, damn, where do these women sit when they come in this office? Do they just awkwardly stand there? Do they shove themselves into the chair and just be really uncomfortable? Because I was pretty uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
one thing I've noticed about your office is like you make an effort to be like, this is just a normal chair that everyone will fit in.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely. It's really important to me. And it's been a part of the journey in this work. It starts with like, oh, I don't have to be a certain weight to be acceptable or valuable. I don't have to diet. I can eat intuitively and move joyfully. Oh, I recognize the harms of diet and how they lead to eating disorders and all of these things. And, then incorporating the trauma into the care. And then it goes to a level of advocacy because now it's like, wait a minute. It's awful to have a bad body image, right? It's awful to get all these negative messages, but when your life is threatened by anti-fat bias and by medical weight stigma, it's a whole nother level of like problem. So I have definitely been very concerned with and committed to the process of creating more space for people in larger bodies in medical fitness and health settings and in the world, really. I went to a wine bar in my city and it was really cute. They had these bar stools and they just had like the metal on the side. It wasn't a full armrest, but it was just on the side toward the back. And I could not sit comfortably. And I was hurt. I got up, I had bruises on my thighs from sitting in the chairs. And so I messaged the owners like, listen, I'm not trying to start trouble, but these chairs are not like no one can sit in this chair in my size body or larger. And that is a problem. And they, apologized. It was a small business. So they were like, we're working on it. I promise you. They covered, my wine the next time I was there. So it was really nice. And then a few months later, I went back and they had updated the seating. So
Oh,
in my
yay.
space, yeah, right. It was a win. In my space, it's especially because I am, trying to care specifically for people in larger bodies and in eating disorder recovery. I'm gonna go far out of my way to try to make the space work. And it is on limited funds. I am a single private practice owner. It's just me, but it's worth it. It's worth the investment of money. It's worth the investment of research. It's worth the investment of time. People need to be comfortable. How do you feel when you walk into a space and there's nowhere for you to comfortably sit? Most likely you feel undervalued and like they don't want you there. And that nobody should feel that way. Nobody should ever feel that way. So, yep, I went on Amazon. I searched for the largest weight capacity, the widest, most comfortable, cushy chair I could find, and everyone sits in it. My tiny patients, my mid-sized patients, my larger patients, and everybody loves it. And there's no complaints, and it's really important to have that. I have a blood pressure cuff that measures. I forgot the measurement, but I have like the standard one they send you, and then the large one, the extra large one, and then I source the extra, extra, extra large so that if I need to take blood pressure, it is going to be an accurate reading because I don't want you thinking your blood pressure is high because I'm using something that's too small for you and doesn't accommodate your body. So it's really important that everybody get equitable health care, medical care, wellness care, fitness care. And when you don't go out of your way to make this happen, people, they slip through the cracks and they're left feeling like they don't matter. And my thing is not on my watch, not if I can help it,
I
so.
love that you brought that up for two reasons. Like one, when medical spaces are not weight inclusive, it discourages people from seeking out care, which
Yes.
definitely shows up and impacts the research that we
Yeah.
get on weight, when people talk about the connection between weight and health, but it's not
Yeah.
usually accounted for. And
Nope.
the second thing that I really appreciate that you brought up that we haven't actually discussed on this podcast yet, but is something that I talk about with clients is absolutely a layer of the body image healing. It is learning to be accepting of all bodies and accepting
Right.
your body and exploring the thoughts and the feelings and the beliefs and the cultural messages. And then part of being empowered to heal it is that layer of actually being able to then take it a step further and advocate to make changes in your community, in kind of
Yeah.
the world and the culture, and to advocate for safe spaces and to spread the message and to write in those letters that you're talking about to educate other people can give you a sense of empowerment that
Right.
you can help make a difference in whatever small way you can, right? Like that example you gave is one restaurant in one city, but they
Right.
probably will never make that mistake again. And
Yep.
they have been educated and you felt like you did something. And that's just an important layer to the healing to look for those opportunities, you know, even if it's just like sending a letter in to
Yeah.
a public representative, or there's all sorts of ways that we can help advocate for safer, more inclusive spaces. And that's actually aids in your own healing.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's worth it. And it doesn't have to be confrontational or rude or, mean. It can be very, because a lot of times, again, we're dealing with ignorance in most cases. And I don't say that, in a mean way, but we are. People don't think about these things because we haven't been taught to consider how our preferences and choices and design concept impacts a variety of bodies, and we've never been taught that there's value in body diversity. Our culture teaches us that we should all be seeking a similar sized body, essentially, because we use the BMI charts in the US, which is the dumbest thing ever. So we don't think about embracing the beauty of different body sizes. And so it just goes over a lot of people's heads. So I'm happy to educate or mention it, like, hey, just in case you hadn't thought about this, so for sure.
I feel like that story has kind of like inspired me to like talk to my OBGYN office. They're fraught with some problems anyway, but like that is one little easy thing that I don't think would be that crazy for them to change. Like, I feel like I'm going to write them an email and be like, hey, FYI, I think that we should consider at least changing some of the seating
Yeah.
so that there are comfortable places. And I'm going to challenge our listeners to kind of like keep your eyes open for places where people in larger bodies or people might not be comfortable in general, like regardless of the reason. And maybe like, casually mention it to the people that can make some changes. And let's see if we can't make the world a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, for sure. Because
That's your
we would
homework.
do it if it was, to make it accessible for someone in a wheelchair, which that's still an issue too, just to be clear. People with varying levels of disability or differing abilities. I mean, the world is not as accessible to them as it should be either. So, there's a space to advocate for, like you said, just general inclusivity, giving more people options. Bistros, cafes are notorious for like the teeniest, tiniest little seats that will break under reasonable pressure. So yeah, I think it is important that, we all do our part to advocate for, and again, in a nice and respectful, kind way, because a lot of times we're educating people who never would have considered this thing before.
And honestly, frankly, to our listeners, simply sharing this episode is a form of advocacy to raise
Yeah.
awareness that is really helpful. And, you can't, I always say, once you see the harms of diet culture, you cannot unsee them.
Yes.
But until then, it is so normalized and so woven into the fabric of our society that we're just not aware of it. And I think the point is, when you know different, you can do different. And that
Yeah.
benefits everyone, including people in smaller bodies, because the reality is diet culture and anti-fat bias, it's pressure, right? It's pressure to look a certain way, it's pressure to eat a certain way, it's pressure to exercise a certain way, it's pressure to pursue health a certain way.
Yeah.
Yes, it disproportionately impacts people in larger bodies, but people in smaller bodies feel the pressure also.
Absolutely.
It does lead to disordered eating and body image struggles and eating disorders and all sorts of other kind of health problems or concerns that come along with all of those things. So it truly is for everyone. It makes the world a safer, kinder, better place for everybody.
Yeah. Everybody needs to get that concept of it. I think sometimes we feel offended at equity because it's like, oh, what are they going to take from me? But it's not taking anything from you. It's adding to all of us when we make sure spaces are safe for everyone.
Yeah.
I just feel like nobody that I know who's a small business owner like sets out to be exclusive or an asshole. It's just that we don't think about it. We
Yeah.
flip through the catalog, we see this chair, it looks cute, we're gonna go with that, and that's where our thought process ends. So I feel like by just raising awareness about like, hey, some people aren't comfy in these chairs,
Mhm.
is like, yay.
Even if it's for one person, it's worth it to me. If it makes one person that comes into your space more comfortable and feel more accepted, it's worth it. It's worth it. And as a small business owner, again, there's limitations like financially, like the stuff that's heavier duty, that's more comfortable, that's wider, that's larger is more expensive. It absolutely is. It shouldn't be, but it is, and that is a barrier we have to get around. Sometimes I have not been successful yet, but I have tried to apply for grant funding to support additional equipment to meet the needs of larger body people, and I'll keep trying. Maybe one day we'll get some money from it, but again, it's worth the effort. I had a very uncomfortable but thoughtful argument on social media with a woman the very first time I posted about my office space, as a matter of fact, talking about its accessibility. Yep. And she said something to the effect of, you would feel differently if you were a trauma nurse like me and you're trying to help a gunshot victim who is obese and bleeding out, and we're struggling to save his life. And I had to sit with that for a minute. I've worked in many hospital settings, and I was just like, you know what? I went on there. I was like, I can imagine that what you do is really hard and very stressful and overwhelming at times. The things that you see, that's trauma, right? The things you have to see and engage with. And I don't doubt for 1 minute that it's probably really hard to provide the care that's needed for someone in a really large body when you don't have the equipment or the materials. There's just a lot going on, right? I was like, but we are healthcare providers. And just because something is more difficult doesn't mean that we're not supposed to do it. And we don't mistreat people because of the bodies that they live in, because it's challenging to do. And another commenter brought up a very excellent point. It's really difficult to work with like premature babies. They're so tiny. Finding the materials and the equipment to get into their tiny veins and to support them is hard work. It doesn't come natural because they're not the average size person.
Yeah.
But
And we
guess
don't
what?
blame the infant.
Yes, we do that
Right.
shit, right? Because we do hard shit in this line of work because that's what we're supposed to do. And we take oaths to not harm people and to give people the best of us. And it doesn't matter if it's hard. You work in trauma, ma'am. Yes, it's hard. Like, it's hard. But people are still worth it. And shaming people about their bodies and assuming like, oh, if you were just thinner, life would be easy. No, that's not how it works. You can still have a challenging patient who has cognitive issues, right? You can't explain things to them, or, people that are manic and you have to hold them. All of this is hard, but it doesn't take the value off the person to, justify us not giving them the best care. And so, that's my argument to that. Everybody deserves the best of us, even if it's hard.
And I think first of all, what a thoughtful response you shared with that woman. I hope it was well received and maybe helped change her perspective.
It's
But
the
also,
internet. It wasn't well received.
well, yeah, all right.
You never know.
But also it helped point out what the health at every size message really is, which is not actually saying, which I think many people misunderstand.
Yeah.
That movement is not saying that every body at every size is healthy. Healthy
Right.
bodies come in all shapes and sizes, right? So do unhealthy ones. What the movement is really saying is that everybody, no matter their size, deserves that respectful, inclusive, high level care. And it's really advocating for that. And I think it's such an important point that just gets lost and misunderstood and misinterpreted. But really that is the crux of the point. Everything that you said a minute ago is exactly what it is advocating for and why.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's whenever someone hears health at every size, they usually call it healthy at every size. And they're like, oh, so just be lazy and eat bonbons and watch TV. And it's like, no one in the history of this movement has ever said those things. What we've said is that health can exist. And first of all, health is a spectrum. There is no yes or no, right or wrong, black or white. It exists on a spectrum. Some of us will be, if we live long enough, you'll be at different ends of the spectrum. That is just the statistics, right?
And it's evolving. It's
ever evolving, ever
Mhm.
evolving. And it's not a moral obligation. It doesn't mean you're good or bad if you're closer to this side of the spectrum versus this side. Everybody deserves, respectful, equitable kind, respectful care, period. And you're right. That's what the movement is all about. And that's why I fully, support it and am a member of ASDA, because I appreciate what they're trying to do for our world and for the community. So
Yeah.
Diet culture tells us though that some diseases are acceptable and then others are completely our fault. Like I hear people frequently be like, I have diabetes, I brought this on myself, like I have cancer, I brought this on myself. And I'm like, oh my God.
yeah,
Like,
shame. It's the
now you're
shame.
dealing with like the shame and guilt and the pressure to like,
Yeah.
I can't get sick because then people will think that it was like something I did. Whereas like we don't think that about like, oh, I wear contacts.
Right.
I had to have braces and I dye my hair, like we don't think about some stuff like that, but some we do. So, there's just a lot of pressure when it comes to diet culture and health and illness.
Yeah, it's pressure and it's the desire for control. And I know it well because that used to be me. Like I thought I could control my entire life. Okay. Like when I'm talking on these podcasts and posting all this stuff on social media, it is not from a place of sitting on my high horse, because let me tell you, I have been in the mud. I have been the person believing like, oh, listen, all you have to do is do X, Y. I wrote a book. I wrote a book about wellness and how to be healthy and perfect as a busy mom. Like that was my whole goal in life. So I get it. It feels safe. It feels safe to you when you're scared. I grew up in chaos. So for me, safety feels like control, discipline, rules, structure. You got this. I was a very, very good dieter, to be clear. I was very committed.
Dieters are.
I was very good at my job. Okay. So
I have lots of practice usually.
And just to be clear, if I understand, you're saying you wrote the book when you were stuck in diet culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I would love to just sort of like, I guess maybe move towards wrapping things up by pointing out that it's okay to evolve, right?
Yes.
When you know different, you can do different. And that's out there. That was at the time of your life and that's where you were, and that's okay. Maybe you would evolve and share things differently now, but no, most people are gonna go through that journey to get to the other place of where we're talking about today, because it's just not the cultural norm that we're into. And so like permission to evolve, I think is really important, and shift your thinking.
Yeah.
Tara Maria, any last thoughts, questions before we say goodbye to Dr. Lisa?
No, I'm just thankful we had this conversation and thankful that you accepted this invitation to come on the podcast. What a great conversation.
I feel like we did a lot of rebranding today. That was really helpful.
I love it.
For helping us.
Dr. Lisa, what's your favorite exercise?
Ooh. So, I've been moving away from exercise and more movement. I'm into like dancing and different stretching and stuff primarily. But I will say one of my favorite exercises, and I'll do it all the time, I really enjoy like a standard like dumbbell deadlift. I just like it. I love deadlifts. Yeah, I just like to build the glutes and the hamstrings, and it's a muscle that I notice as a physical therapist when people lose over time and it atrophies, they don't have the mobility that they want in life for sitting to stand, rolling, scooting. So I like to keep the glutes firm with a deadlift.
and you need that for dancing. So there's that.
Definitely need that for dancing. Yes.
Dr. Lisa, where can people find you?
I live on Instagram, so follow me there. It's at Healthy Fit, and fit is spelled PHIT, or my website, healthyfit.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I really, I mean, out of all of our episodes, if you're going to share one, make it this one. It's such an important.
Agreed.
Thank y'all.
This was a good one.
Yeah, we help us spread the message and grow the movement, and we will see you back here next time. Actually, would love to offer people talking about that idea of sort of like being stuck in diet culture and not knowing what you don't know until you sort of learn it. I do have a guide. It's called Invisible Diet. It is free, and I'll link to it in the show notes, but it can help you maybe identify where maybe you are using some diet culture behaviors, thought patterns that you don't even realize, and it can help you grow and in your food journey. So throw that in there. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.